There has never been a better time to be born a woman. There are more female heads of government and more women leading organizations and running businesses than at any other time in history. Yet, in many parts of the world, women do not enjoy the same legal rights as men. They are relegated to unequal spheres without access to education or employment. And for many, the right to live free from physical and sexual violence is still a dream. My name is Amanda Foreman, and as a historian and biographer, I have spent my career studying women's lives. The simple truth is that our story has never followed a straight line from darkness to light.
The real history of women is full of swings and reversions, with liberties gained and lost from one era and one society to the next. I also think that you can judge a civilization by the way it treats its women and the degree to which women have authority, agency and autonomy.
Why did history become almost exclusively male? Why has almost every civilization set limits on women's sexuality, speech and freedom of movement? And what makes the status of women so vulnerable to the dictates of politics, economics or religion?
And to those who think that women haven't played an active role in history, or that ours is simply a mindless narrative of oppression, I want to throw down the gauntlet. Because I believe that any history of the world that excludes women or simply pushes them to the margins isn't just a distortion, but an
The hard truth is that in almost every civilization, women have been deemed the secondary sex. It's an idea that has become so ingrained, it's been written into history as a biological truth. But why did this happen? Have human societies always followed this pattern? And how? In the following millennia, as agriculture became increasingly controlled, society began to organize itself around more recognizable divisions of gender. Women's roles became tied to motherhood and the home. Their status became secondary to men, who took control over property and public space. These are the world's earliest known law codes, and within them, we have the first silencing of the female voice. There's a phrase on one of these cones that says, if a woman speaks out of turn, then her... Stretching from Ukraine in the west, across Kazakhstan and South Russia, to Mongolia in the east, the Eurasian steppe was home to the nomads, most notably the Scythian, Sarmatian and Pazyryk tribes. Dominated by warrior horsemen, this was just as male-led and martial a world. The best pasture lands had to be rigorously defended, and women were often captured in intertribal wars. But recent archaeology has revealed evidence of gender relations within the tribes that proves that the control and submission of women was not an inevitable development in ancient culture. Professor Leonid Yablonsky from the Moscow Institute of Archaeology has been excavating nomadic burial sites called kurgans across southern Russia for the past 25 years. Over the course of his long career, he has discovered hundreds of burials that reveal the centrality of women to nomadic culture.
Но у женщин, кроме украшений, мы находим и другие самые разнообразные предметы. Это и орудия труда, орудия для выделывания кожи. У некоторых женщин мы находим еще и предметы для нанесения татуировок. Кроме того, женщины отвечали за всю духовную жизнь в этом обществе, spiritual life. They were responsible. И таким образом социальные функции женщины были намного выше, чем социальные функции мужчин. Хотя военными вождями были только мужчины.
Did you find any evidence of women being buried with weapons?
Yes. Раньше археологи думали, что если найден скелет с оружием, то это непременно мужчина. А если найден скелет с бусами, то это непременно женщина. Но потом, когда научились определять пол по костям скелета, оказалось, что это не так. И антропологи, физические антропологи, нам показали, что мы очень часто...
The female graves contain a remarkable variety of treasures. There's gold jewellery, such as torques and feline coat clasps, sacred objects, such as mirrors, seashells, and portable altars, and a large cache of weapons, revealing women's roles as warriors within the tribe.
Смотрите, очень маленькая ручка.
Yeah, your hand is too big. It could only be for a woman. It's a woman's implement.
Among the treasures, items from one individual burial stand out, those of a 14-year-old girl who was buried with over 40 bronze arrowheads.
Лук – это оружие дистанционного боя. То есть не обязательно обладать большой физической силой для того, чтобы уметь хорошо стрелять из лука. Как и сегодня, и во время Второй мировой войны, и во время войны на Кавказе роль снайперов исполняли именно женщины, потому что снайперская винтовка – это оружие дистанционного боя. Поэтому нельзя исключить, что во время войн древних, сарматских, женщины могли тоже пользоваться луками, находясь на некоторой дистанции от противника.
Much like Neolithic Çatalhöyük, these finds reveal a world in which the precariousness of survival negated ideas of segregation or divisions of labour. Women's roles were not confined to their biological functions or to domestic space.
The nomads were, if you will, a kind of third way, different from the empires and city-states around them. And as for the urban codes that governed land, property, status, the family, none of these applied to them. And what this meant for women was that their value extended far beyond being simply someone else's property or producing sons. They were recognized because of their skills and because their contribution to society was absolutely necessary. It just goes to show that biology isn't. Today, the Parthenon itself represents democracy, but Athenian democracy wasn't universal. It was only open to men. Only they could be citizens of the polis, the state, and what was left to women was serving the oikos, the household. They were barred from the law, from the economy, from politics, even from mingling in places where citizens conducted their business. They couldn't be bought, couldn't be sold, but they did spend their entire life under the legal guardianship of their nearest male relative. When they were 14, this changed from being their fathers to their husbands, and only he could represent them in public outside the home. All this begs the question, what did women themselves feel about their status? Were they happy, or were they angry? Were they held in contempt, or were they honoured as mothers and wives? The answer to all this, I think.
And in this world, which had emerged in parallel to the civilizations of Mesopotamia and their starkly gendered law codes, the legal status of women was almost identical to that of men. As seen in its art, replete with couples lovingly holding hands, even wearing the same clothes, ancient Egypt embraced both the masculine and the feminine. A shared life, rather than reproduction, was the purpose of marriage, and women were allowed considerable autonomy over their own lives.
It meant that when all the planets aligned, women could, on occasion, rule. The greatest of Egypt's 6 known ruling queens was Hatshepsut. She came to power in the 15th century BC as the regent for her stepson, Thutmose III, who was just a baby. But it was how she ruled for over 2 decades that demonstrates her genius for government. Hatshepsut appropriated for herself the religious symbols of kingship. Famously, her statues depict her wearing the divine pharaonic beard. But just as important was how she concentrated on what Egypt did best: building and trade. She organized the largest ever trade mission in her country's history to the land of Punt. Her legacy was peace and prosperity. But even in Egypt, there's a sting in the tail. We don't know why, but after her death, the next pharaoh literally defaced Hatshepsut from the public record. In a sense, she represents the fate of so many women, not just in the ancient world, but throughout all of history.
The story of civilization has largely been written as the triumph of humanity, and it has given us extraordinary advances: codes of law and commerce, science and art. But if the story of women is put back into history, the uncomfortable truth is that its benefits have been ambiguous. For I believe that part of what it meant to be civilized also meant the regulation and control of women, which varied according to the worlds in which they lived. Looking at the variety of women's experiences in the ancient world, from restrictive Assyria to tolerant Egypt, from the equality of the nomads to the nadir of ancient Greece, it's clear why the history of women has never been a simple story of darkness to light.
Civilization and patriarchy went together hand in hand, but it wasn't a fixed relationship. There were powerful women in the ancient world who had a voice and an impact on their societies. But it also bequeathed, particularly the Greeks, deeply pejorative notions about the nature of women, about their sexuality, their reason and their capabilities that survive to this day. One set of rules was established for men and another for women, denying them their autonomy over their bodies, their agency over their actions, and their authority over their